going to be speaking on the hand that's taking down O-Block, the death of Chicago rapper FBG Duck, and 5 new arrests.
Welcome to Tito.tv, episode 1 of The Nightmare.
The federal indictment that was unsealed this morning, which charged 5 individuals with federal crimes related to the August 4th, 2020 murder of Chicago rapper Carlton Weekly, who's also known as FBG Duck. An indictment alleges that these 5 individuals, members or associates,
So,
the indictment further alleges that these individuals
we'll be playing Doom 2016.
Charged in the federal indictment and named as members of the O-Block faction of the Black Disciple Street Gang. Named in the indictment was 23-year-old Buwop, 30-year-old C Murder, 28-year-old Kenny Mack, 30-year-old Los, and 22-year-old C Mack. All 5 were hit with racketeering, murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and 3 counts of assault. In all, facing a minimum life sentence in federal prison with the possibility of a of federal medicine. Investigated will most likely contrive the plan to assassination, leading many to believe this was the end going to take. All the men before a federal judge went to Capitol only hours after being arrested when they all pled not guilty. Prosecutors sought all four defendants to know without bond, saying that dangerous to the community, a serious flight risk, and a possible case of death. Represented by lawyers, Tupac stated that he wanted to share during the church, Moses the dishwasher, his murder, apparently worked at a bakery, as well as Popeye's chicken. But these jobs are at the letting crime for Jesus. Originally, Instagram blogs for the 405 members were crossed off for the 5 years up until the interest itself was released. Immediately, they began to speculate how much was paid in this guy lost talk after the current investigation, as the interview came only weeks after the evidence was found. She asked me how high do I get, I told her high as none. Federal prosecutors would state they used social media, music videos, and building this case, as the men accused used both to publicly claim responsibility for acts of violence and taunt other gang members. The repetitive cycle of murders, diss songs, and more murders has cast a shadow over the genre known as drill, with news stations pointing out that Duck was killed less than a month after dropping his song titled Dead Bitches, in which he dissed multiple O Block members and affiliates that had been killed. This wasn't his first song doing so. This wasn't his first time getting shot. This was just his last. A longtime rival of O Block rapper King Von, Von would diss Duck following his death, stating there's no more FBG, as Duck was obviously the leader of his own movement. Von would only live to celebrate 3 more months before being killed himself, unrelated. It's unclear at this time if more O Block members will be indicted and how many more murders will be solved with assistance from the federal government. What is known is the feds have over a 95% conviction rate, leading many facing federal charges to plea out to a lesser sentence, but with the possibility of prosecutors seeking death, a life sentence may be the only deal on the table. What's unclear is who exactly did what. It said there was 2 vehicles, 4 shooters, and only 5 men indicted, meaning one man was only a driver, as one of the other shooters must have also been driving. The 2 vehicles were described as a black Ford Taurus and a silver Chrysler 300. 911 dispatch relayed the license plate of the black Ford Taurus as BY19386, and the vehicle was registered to Carlos Arthur, aka Lotus. A YouTube channel named Doug Case broke down even more details behind the vehicles, going as far as searching the tow history of the Chrysler with the license plate BN25459, which shows that it previously been towed inside of a car. A live video posted to Facebook would show a man smoking inside of a vehicle with a matching interior of the 2013 Chrysler. The Facebook account is Kenny Mack, whose alias was named in the indictment as belonging to Kenneth Robinson. Media the two owners of the two vehicles used in the murder of FBG Duck have been charged with this murder. At this time, we can only assume things are going to get worse before they get better for O-Block, with the possibility of members testifying against one another, in which prosecutors will only be interested in more information detailing unsolved murders and shootings, so they can further bury the criminal enterprise known as O-Block. Imagine if Duck or another guy. Imagine if the two just went separate ways and both created their own lane of music in which both of them were able to become successful. Because I don't give a fuck what side you're on, you can't deny the talent that each of them have. This is the sad reality of what comes with this lifestyle. Fast death, long sentences, and just as Puwap's career was started, it sounds like it's already over. But we're gonna get more details as this case goes on. I highly doubt the feds are done with O-Block, never mind Chicago. There could be a lot more shit that's about to unravel. We'll keep y'all posted. It's 1090J. We're rocking with Charlie Alpha. What's up, everybody? Back to another episode of Yo West. It's 1090J. I'm rocking with y'all rocking with me. In this video, we're going to be speaking on Operation No Face, No Case, a South Florida gang takedown, targeting the Osama gang, named after the rapper J. Osama, who was shot and killed in 2000. October 14, 2021, Palm Beach County Sheriff's were announced a gang takedown of 8 men and 1 juvenile who were all alleged to be members of the violent Florida Osama. A year-long gang investigation was named Operation No Face, No Case, and all 9 alleged gang members have been hit with Florida's RICO Act, a first-degree felony punishable by 30 years in Florida's 3 of those accused are Palm Beach County rappers Lil Snipe, Baby Clark, and Bang Alabama. According to the gang unit investigation, the Osama gang members predominantly reside in Lake Park, Riviera Beach, West Palm Beach, and Lake Worth. Originating around 2011, Osama gang members on file are known about their social. The gang members have been tied to murders, shootings, robberies, burglaries, narcotics deals, and originally went by the name Isha. With the murder of a member, changed that name. Back in January of 2019, 22-year-old Jonas Joseph, who is more commonly known as Palm Beach rapper J. Osama, was found shot unconscious in the vehicle evidence. The driver had fled the scene, and J.O. was transported to a nearby hospital and died. At the time of his death, his biggest dog control had over 1 million now is over 2.5 million. His death has become the birth of what is now known as Osama. Investigators would learn this through social media and watching YouTube images to get it right. According to the application, 21-year-old Gene Lewis, aka Lil Snipe, has been connected to 4 separate incidents in which law enforcement believe he committed a pattern of racketeering activity in furtherance of the gang. Back in 2017, Snipe was in a car with 3 others when they were pulled over at 1 in the morning. Snipe and 1 other were already documented members of the Haitian Boy Street Gang, and the approaching officer could smell marijuana coming from the street. A search revealed 2 grams of crack, approximately 3 grams of heroin inside of capsules, and 90 grams of marijuana along with 2 stolen firearms. All 3 Crimes Division with video and audio interviews were conducted. Snipe said he had nothing to do with any of the items in the vehicle, and when asked if his DNA would come back on the guns, he said no. When asked if he voluntarily take a DNA test to prove it, he said yes. The 2 other Snipe was arrested with denied ownership of the weapons and declined a voluntary DNA test. Snipe's DNA would later be found within the trigger guard of the Block 26, leading to his arrest and conviction for being a delinquent in possession of a firearm. He'd be placed on probation and would violate a few months for resisting arms. In May of 2018, gang unit detectives were conducting a social media investigation on Snipe's Instagram, Snipe on the Roof. Snipe was on Instagram Live with an Haitian board member named Jay Osama. The detective was able to record the live on the phone, and Snipe didn't see a black firearm, while Jay Osama pointed his own firearm at the screen throughout the video, even holding up the weapon and showing live, stating he got military permission. At one point, Snipe used his phone on a shot with the camera, and with the video recorded, the detective sent the copy to an ATF firearms expert, he actually taken the shot that was not there no more. Our companies keep block airsoft guns and replicate the same bindings as real firearms. Airsoft guns have been in a barrel within the barrel that wasn't seen on video. Not only that, with the Glock Sniper's open, had an aftermarket guide rod laser that's only produced in the actual firearm. Jay Osama could be seen holding an M57 handgun, chambered in 5.7 by 28mm bullets that resemble rifle rounds. This Instagram Live would lead to Snipe being charged with being a felon in constructive possession of a firearm. More recently, in 2021, officers were responding to a crash in their gunfire. While en route to the area, the Riviera Beach shot spot detected 15 shots fired in the 1100 block of West 23rd Street. As officers approached, they saw a black bull with dark tints speed to a gas station and down another street. Now chasing the vehicle, the license plate came back as being stolen out of West Palm Beach as the vehicle fled at approximately 80
New
miles
advocate
per hour.
talking to the USC.
While
It's
going down
got
another road,
Got it.
the Ford slowed to about 50 before the front seat passenger, later identified as Snipe, threw a black rifle and black gloves out of the window. A few moments later, the back passenger threw another rifle out of the window. Eventually, the SUV pulled over and 3 black men fled the vehicle. A K9 unit canvassing the area noticed a black man with a hoodie and his pants around his ankles, walking northbound. His pants and shoes were wet as if he walked on the canal. He was located just west of where the suspects held up. He was placed in custody and identified as both Snipe. 2 victims were located at the shooting scene, one suffered a gunshot to the leg as the other's leg was grazed. Detectives later recovered a .556 Palmetto State Armory AR-15 rifle, a Smith & Wesson MP-15 223 rifle, a black rifle scope, and 2 black gloves. Snipe was arrested and charged with possession of a firearm by a felony, resisting an officer, and armed trespassing. This case remains open, and all those previous arrests will be further from the gang, as gang members have been found to commit acts of resisting arrest to gain notoriety while carrying firearms is one to display dominance over victims and protect themselves from rivals. These crimes are considered violations of Florida. 23-year-old Frank Gata, aka Fango Fambo, was connected to 3 separate incidents starting back in 2015 when Palm Beach tactical agents were conducting surveillance on Gang's homes. They rushed him after observing him sitting in a vehicle pocket in the driveway. They find 29.5 grams of marijuana where Bam was sitting in the car. They searched the bedroom within the house where they found a .40 caliber Kel-Tec rifle that had been stolen out of Jupiter, Florida, and was laid by the bed. On the floor in front of the bedroom closet, they find a .22 caliber Ruger rifle with a sawed-off slot. And within the dresser, officers found 6.4 grams of marijuana and 7 grams of cocaine. Man was arrested for possession of a firearm by a delinquent, possession of marijuana over 20 grams, and possession of cocaine, which was found guilty. Man was placed on probation, and in 2016, law enforcement would search his house after a shooting investigation. Bam, his mother, brother, and another male and female were all living in the home. A .7.62 SKS rifle with a full magazine was found in the mother's bedroom along with a 9mm hybrid handgun. In the living room under a futon was a .22 caliber P22 handgun with a round in the chamber and a box of bullets. Also inside of the home was marijuana, 2 digital scales, and a binder. Man was arrested for violating his probation, and when he was interviewed, he said he knew about the P22 handgun found in the living room, saying it wasn't his. But at that point, the investigator had set the bottle of paint on the ground. When asked if his DNA was on it, he said his brother's friend had took it out one time to play with it and threw it to him. He caught the gun, so his DNA would be on it. Bam was then arrested for constructive possession of a firearm and found guilty that same year. In 2017, he'd be convicted for possession of heroin, possession of marijuana, and attempt to sell. These incidents would violate Florida's RICO Act, and selling drugs enhances a member's status. The third rapper, Baby Clark, was in public convicted because he was a juvenile. And the remaining 6 men arrested all had previous convictions for drug charges revolving around selling cocaine, heroin, and marijuana. From 2011 to 2021, law enforcement have evidence connecting the Sama gang to shootings, drug deals, weapons, even social media posts, messages, and music videos of the group brandishing firearms. In 2017, a confidential informant was able to identify members of the gang, as well as provide information on the crimes they committed, like shootings, robberies, and drug sales. Members would also be identified by interviews on YouTube, such as an interview by Bang Alabama in 2018, when he stated he moved to Lake Park, Florida, and befriended J. Osama, Little Snipe, and Third Man Bud. While the amount of evidence against them is immense, this isn't a federal RICO case, meaning the 95% conviction rate the feds uphold doesn't apply here. But without a lawyer and the funds to fight this case, this may be the takedown that buries the Sama. Now, like I said in the video, this is not a federal RICO case as far as I know. The only 2 states that have a RICO charge is Florida and Georgia, which is tying up rappers, gangs that rappers are tied into. I believe YFN Lucci is fighting in Georgia case right now. But aside from the amount of evidence that they've got, literally search warrants and just finding them with shit on them, a bunch of them have been identified solely through social media. Meaning when you're giving these interviews like, oh yeah, I'm a rapper over here, this is him, da da da, we're homeboys, we've known each other this long, the police are documenting all of this shit. They're creating a pyramid of gang members, trying to figure out the hierarchy, trying to figure out who's who, which one's a soldier, which one's telling them what to do. And then they're tying everything together. What's crazy about this is, aside from the shootings, homie might have just been selling drugs, right? Might have been selling some weed on the side, cocaine, if he got a base, and he's gonna come through and get it. But it's not like he's pushing kilos and having the whole gang distributing this shit. You know what I mean? So it's one man selling drugs, gang affiliated, but the state of Florida is able to make it seem that he's selling drugs in furtherance to the entire fucking gang. When in all actuality, he's probably only selling drugs so he can buy Gucci belts and fucking afford a cameraman for a music. You know what I'm saying? These dudes are hustling just to hustle because they're not going to get real fucking jobs. But the police are making it seem like it's a whole gang movement in which they're all trafficking, moving around, trying to assassinate shit. To be honest with you, they make this shit sound so much worse than it actually is. And if these guys were individually charged with what they've been hit with, they'd be perfectly fine because they've all been convicted on what the fuck they've been hit with. You see what I'm saying? They're all getting charged with racketeering based off of shit they were already convicted for. That's like me getting charged with racketeering for the old crime that I have from back in 2012 because they want to say that crime was in furtherance of gang activity, which violates the RICO law. To me, it's bullshit. I don't know if these guys had the funds to really put up 50 or 100 grand for a lawyer, being that they aren't really that big of rappers. The biggest rapper that was really pushing out of their camp was J. Osama, who was tragically shot and killed. But what's fucked up about his murder is he was the passenger in the vehicle the driver was gone. If the driver was his homeboy, because he was found unconscious but still alive and later died, could have been a chance that driver drove him to a hospital and still convicted. Hey, it's 1090 Jake. Stay the fuck off interviews if you gangbanging. Stay the fuck out of videos showing guns if you're not supposed to possess guns. Be smarter when you move. There's a million ways to be successful. Don't choose the one that's gonna land you. I'm rocking with y'all and y'all rocking with me. Until next time. Man, yo, what's up, everybody? We'll be back with another episode of EOS. It's 1090J. I'm rocking with y'all and y'all rocking with me. In this video, we're going to be speaking on Houston rapper Guero 10K, who's just been charged with 3 more murders, is currently fighting a total of 5, and is being accused of allegedly killing an elderly couple who he believed was the grandparents of rival rapper September 1st, 2021, 22-year-old Kelvin Medeo was arrested in Houston, Texas on a warrant. Sitting inside of the Harris County Sheriff's Office, Kelvin was interviewed specifically about his involvement in the video shooting of Houston rapper Cash Out Ace that left 9 people shot and 2 victims died. This interview will be the beginning of the downfall of Houston rapper alleged gang leader Guero 10K. Investigators knew exactly what they were speaking with. They just needed Kelvin to know how fucked he already was before they could manipulate him and tell him it all. They knew his mom, Susanna Segura, part of a 2009 Honda Civic Coupe van from Facebook. They'd already located the vehicle in a scrapyard. Kelvin had signed over the title, and inside, investigators found several spent shell casings, which were tested and linked to multiple shootings in Houston, 2 of which being homicide cases linked to the 10K gang. They had Kelvin's Snapchat account containing messages he sent to Guero 10K, where he spoke on 2 back-to-back shootings, stating one of the victims was offering a reward for information on who owns a black 2-door Civic with a broken window. It was Kelvin's car that was being described in a total of 3 shootings, 2 of which homicide cases. It was Kelvin's friends himself who was in nearby towers, giving away their locations at the times of these shootings, and now investigators have played the hand and played it well. It's Kelvin to talk. Kelvin confessed to being the driver of the music video shooting. He'd go on to say Christian Cavazos Jr., also known as Guero 10K, was sitting in the front passenger seat armed with an AK-47. Louis Santi, also known as Rico 10K, and Roman Wise, another 10K member, was sitting in the back seat armed with a .40 caliber and 9mm pistol. They turned past the music video location, seeing the rival rapper filming, when Kelvin made a U-turn. On the second pass by, Guero 10K and Roman started firing out of the window, while Rico 10K was shooting with the sunroof. As they drove off, the cameraman was dead, the second man was dead, plenty more were wounded. Cash Out Ace had been left with a bullet in his arm and another in his head, to which doctors later removed a section of his skull. The shooting was captured on a nearby business surveillance camera, where investigators could clearly see the Honda and muzzle flashes from 3 separate guns firing. That's when investigators pulled out a picture. It was an elderly couple. Investigators asking Kelvin if he knew anything about the murder, as he began to cry. Thanks. September 25th, 2019, Rosalba Reyes was on her way home from the hospital where her mother had just died. She was riding in her first car, driven by her niece, and she sat in the front passenger seat with her sister in the back. Her husband, Ramiro, was following close behind in his truck. After a long emotional night, they just wanted to be home. Kelvin Medeo was driving his car early in the morning with Guero, Roman, and Rico 10K. Guero was sitting in the front on a video call with rival rapper Cash Out Ace as they went back and forth making threats. Kelvin told investigators he told Ace to drop the location and meet up, which Ace said he was riding and bringing Dodge Charger. Kelvin would continue telling investigators as Guero and Ace were going back and forth making threats. The Dodge Charger drove past him. Kelvin told Guero to hang up the phone as they started following the Charger all the way home. They watched the vehicle park, and as the doors began to open, Guero and Rico started firing AR pistols, while Roman fired a Glock before driving off, circling back, and opening fire again. Hours later, the group would watch the news cover the shooting, stating an elderly couple had been killed. Kelvin told investigators Guero and Rico weren't upset, fact was the opposite. They were celebrating because they thought they killed Cash Ace's grandparents.
What's the location of your emergency?
It was 1:30 in the morning when Harris County Sheriff received multiple 911 calls reporting gunfire on the 1100 block of Francine Drive, Texas. Deputies arrived on scene finding a dead man lying in the road with multiple gunshots in his heart. A Dodge Charger parked in front of the home had a bullet hole attached to the seat. She'd also been killed. A third man was shot in his hip as he ran out of his home in an attempt to help his family, while the shooter was driving past for the second time. He'd been transported to a hospital where he later be listed as condition. The Reyes, the white dying first as the husband went to his truck in her car, getting shot multiple times in the process, as over 40 shell casings were found in his hip. They had no affiliation with Cash Ace, no ties to the ongoing war in the streets. Roselva Reyes was only guilty of being a passenger of the Dodge Charger, run away home after a lucky death. For gang members, this took the favor of belonging to a burning family. Her and her husband would have celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary only 1 month later. The information Kelvin was able to confess to was enough to charge Guerrero 10K with 2 capital murders, punishable by death in the state of Texas, on top of the 2 murders stemming from the music video shooting that left 7 others dead. Not only that, the Cash Ace brother spoke with investigators in the hospital after the music video shooting, saying he's been on a video call with Rico 10K and made threats with the name in the background. They repeated address claims to know what they did. They tell them to bring back his house and no longer. 30 minutes later, we happen to know. Earlier in September, before the murder of the elderly couple, another shooting took place in the street gang, moving high with his 10K came on the line, going to the job, exiting the constant and sky up highway complex where the 10K left. As they exited, they began to be followed by the dark-colored vehicle, and when they got on the roadway, a person inside the multi-fire car around the road crashed into the tree. 2 of the men got out, opened each other across the road, and the third stayed inside the vehicle and suffered a gunshot wound to the back. As soon as dark-colored vehicle drove back, a man got out, walked up on the crashed vehicle, and opened fire at him, killing 19-year-old Michael Young. Months later, a female who contacted investigators with information about the shooting. She provides details about the shooting on known to the public, inconsistent with the blood systems in the private crash, such as the shooter's drove back to the shooting the victim, making sure he was dead. She goes on to say she heard it from a video call with Guerrero and Rico. When Guerrero said he shot him, Rico said he told him not. Winchester 9mm shell casings were covered on the scene, when later found 9mm shell casings left in the scene of the music video shoot 6 months later. But Kelvin confessed that Rico 10K was armed with a 9mm. Guerrero 10K's cell phone also pinned a tower within 700 feet from the apartment complex on the day and around the time of the murder. And he pinned another tower 6,700 feet away from the murder scene after it happened. Guerrero 10K now faces 2 capital murders and 3 murder charges for the shooting deaths of 63-year-old Ramiro and 61-year-old Roselva Reyes, 19-year-old Riley Pagano, 20-year-old Gonzalo Gonzalez, and 22-year-old Jonathan Gonzalez. At only 20 years old himself, the charge was fired with an immense amount of evidence, confessions, and testimony against him. It seems now Guerrero 10K is no longer fighting for his freedom, he's fighting for his life, as the punishment of death may be imposed by the state of Texas. At the same time, Guerrero remains in federal custody after a search of his home recovered drugs, rifles, and a Glock with a switch, leaving him charged with possession of a machine gun, meaning Guerrero could face years in federal prison before having to face escape punishment, unless the feds decide to take over with 10 cases per case, which he convicts. Now this case just keeps getting worse and worse. This kid's facing up to 10 years for possession of a fucking machine gun. I don't even know if it's a felon. So the punishment may be even worse than that. If the feds decide to pick up these murder cases, he could be hit with a RICO. And because these are murders, capital murders, if they're charged the same way in the feds, like I said, he could face death in the feds. There's also a chance he could get sentenced for what he's facing federally, and then he's sentenced for what he's facing statewide. So this kid is literally, he's sentenced to death, life, etc. But have to wait for 10 years in the feds first, and then go ahead on that. These motherfuckers want what's owed in the sense. The feds are gonna want the time that they can get for this kid in the state of Texas.
Welcome to the UAC.
He's gonna want
Now 221 accident-free days.
Facing 5 murders. Allegedly killed an elderly couple, assuming it was related to somebody else. I mean,
God rested on the seventh day. But imagine how much further along we would be.
But I guarantee you,
The UAC is committed to excellence.
Now
you can achieve greatness alongside your coworkers.
I guarantee you, not one of them ain't nothing. Want to switch positions. And it isn't just him that's charged. Rico 10K got hit. The kid that snitched got hit. Everybody's fucked right now. And the kid that snitched, he's probably just trying to get the best deal that he can, which most likely is still going to be a ridiculous amount of time. But hey, it's 1090 Jake. I'm rocking with Charlie. Y'all rocking with me. Until next time. Man, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of EOS. It's 1090J. I'm rocking with y'all. Y'all rocking with me. For this video, we're going to be taking on
I am Vega, a sentient intelligence assigned to Mars. After running diagnostics on the Praetor suit, it appears that I can activate optional challenges that, when completed, will assist in upgrading your arsenal at an accelerated pace. I have added a tracking component to your dossier.
Before we start the video, I just want to Let's Go brand new t-shirt on the merch shop. So go ahead and click the link down below in the description. It's a great way to support us here at the Purple Hive Line. Welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Now, just yesterday, I released a video of Mayor Lori Lightfoot with an old Yelp review that some internet users dug up, and it was just absolutely incredible. And I said in that video that I was surprised this was the first time I was hearing about it. Better late than never, I suppose. And then literally the next day, I get a video recommended to me on YouTube of a 6-year-old clip from Jen Psaki when she was working under Obama that once again puts everything into perspective. It makes so much sense. I very often call Jen Psaki a disingenuous career operative who will do and say anything in order to achieve her ambitions within the Democrat establishment. But what I didn't know is that she's been doing this for a long time. She's been pushing straight up phony rhetoric, total lies, absolute nonsense in this case. Knowingly so for her Democrat bosses. She's the perfect political puppet. She is Pravda Jen Psaki, giving her the propaganda and then no questions asked, without a care in the world. No ethical conundrum or moral conundrum whatsoever. She parrots the talking point and thanks her masters for the opportunity. It's absolutely despicable. And when I say knowingly, I mean literally knowingly. In this 6-year-old clip, she pushes absolute nonsense in an effort to protect the former Democrat administration, proceeds to get absolutely eviscerated by the press, and then is caught on hot mic saying something that reveals it all. Let me show you guys. It's absolutely stunning. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. With that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so my YouTube channel is very quickly becoming a database, collecting all of the most disingenuous Jen Psaki moments. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do on this video. Let's start off with this one.
Do you have any reaction to the court's decision dropping the charges against former President Mubarak?
Well, generally, we continue to believe that upholding impartial standards of accountability will advance the political consensus on which Egypt's long-term stability and economic growth depends. But beyond that, I would refer you to the Egyptian government for any further comment.
So
It means that in general, we believe
it sounds
that
to me like it
courts
means
should
nothing.
be, in general, we believe that impartial standards and the
There's
justice
a
system
myth
should
there.
work as planned.
Yeah.
But I don't have any specific comments. I don't have any more specifics on
But
that.
wow, I don't understand that at all. What does that mean? You believe it? Of course you do. But were those standards upheld in this case?
I don't have any specific comment on the case. I point to the Egyptian government case.
Can you see if ask for push your people a little bit harder, because I mean you call for accountability, transparency all
Pistol
the time,
every
any
UAC.
number of governments, and so if no one is held to account, no one is being held accountable for what happened, it seems to me you would have a problem with that.
If there's more we have to say, Matt, we will make sure you all know.
But I mean, what you said says nothing. I mean, it just says, it's like saying, well, we support the right of people to breathe. Well, that's
If we
great,
have
but
a
if
further
they can't
comment on the case, I will make sure all of you have it.
I'm actually a little bit annoyed that the person who was elected by the Egyptian people, Mercy, is languishing in prison, while the person who was accused of murdering hundreds of people is wrapped out.
I appreciate your efforts, Saeed. I don't have anything further on this case. Saeed, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to move on. Thank you, everyone. That Egypt one is ridiculous.
The hot mic moment tells it all. That Egypt one was ridiculous. She knows it, and yet she continues to peddle it. Most likely when she was applying to be Joe Biden's spokesperson. Joe, I'm the perfect person for the job. I will literally say anything, and I'll even let you snip my hair if you really want to. Joe Biden's immediate response, you're hired. It's basically that simple, but what is she suggest? Liar. And while it was being facetious, joking around, in respect to what she probably offered under her resume for Joe Biden, while hyperbolic, I don't think it's necessarily too far from the truth. Her best quality for Joe is covering up, lying, being willing to deceive the American people. As long as it means the paychecks keep coming in, the promotions keep coming in, and she becomes a folk hero for the Vote Luna Matterhorn Twitter crowd. But of course, Jen Psaki continues to prove just how disingenuous she is from 6 years ago all the way to today. Now, Jen Psaki says the backlog at U.S. ports is due to more goods that are being ordered. People have more money and wages are up.
Thanks, Jen. I just want to follow up on the supply chain that you just said was, you're seeing some serious progress on that front. So a couple of questions.
Yeah.
There. So the port of Long Beach yesterday saw this new record for 100 vessels in April waiting to enter. Normally, pre-COVID, they're seeing 17 ships, give or take, an acre. Is the president satisfied where things stand?
The president is satisfied that progress continues to be made, and one of the reasons that there has been so much traffic in a lot of these ports is because there are more goods that are being ordered by people across the country. People have more money, expendable resources. Their wages are up. More people are working than they were a year ago.
All right, so first of all, we know wages are down in respect to inflation. People's buying power is much lower than it was. So wages are not up and people do not have more money. And I'm not seeing any indication that orders or retail sales are up as well. For the most part, things have been relatively stagnant for months. But once again, it proves Jen Psaki will literally and say whatever she has to protect the Biden administration from any level of scrutiny whatsoever. The only thing that's missing at the end of this press conference, after she responded to the question in the way that she did, was this. And also, one of the biggest differences from then to now, back then there were actual journalists asking real questions, following up and pressing on the BS propaganda, the straight up misdirection and misinformation coming out of the White House. That's the difference. That's why it's so much easier for Jen Psaki to get away with it. I mean, who's really calling her out? Maybe me and a couple other people in the YouTube sphere. The current reality is she can do and say what she wants and get away with it. Speaking of exactly that and sticking on the issue of supply chains, here she is giggling, making a joke about it as if it's not serious whatsoever.
It was crystal clear that things were not improving on the supply chain. People couldn't get dishwashers and furniture and treadmills delivered on time, not to mention all sorts of other things. So why
The
is
tragedy of the treadmill that's delayed.
The tragedy of the treadmill that's delayed. Ha ha ha. So funny. As middle and lower class Americans are crushed under the economic pressure. Not to mention, it's not exactly a laughing matter, considering what the Biden administration is focused on right now when it comes to the supply chain crisis, or ports in California that are completely backlogged. You know what this picture right over here is? This is an oil spill in California. You know what caused said oil spill? These ships right over here, which have been waiting there for sometimes weeks on end, just to unload their cargo. One of those ships anchors in an oil well and caused an environmental disaster. But as Jen Psaki says, ha ha ha, it's just the tragedy of the treadmill that's delayed. It has nothing to do with us, it's not our fault. Even though left-leaning politicians across the globe have created an environment where people aren't incentivized to go to work, and in many cases, during the peak of lockdowns, people are furloughed from their jobs and prevented from working in the first place. They did this, and now they're laughing about it in your face. And Jen Psaki is the messenger. I don't know about you guys, but I personally find it sickening. Lying snake-like politicians who make your life worse, refuse to take responsibility, and then point the finger in the other direction. This is on them. The justification for everything they've done is saving lives, but I've still yet to see any concrete proof to prove that they have saved a significant amount of lives. If you look at the varying data across the entire globe, between countries that have and haven't locked down, between states that have and haven't, I'm not seeing very much of a disparity between the two. And so all of these crises, all of these problems fall on their shoulders, and then what a slap in the face for them to laugh about it and make silly little jokes. It's sociopathic, it's evil. And the contrast I always make, what is truly more evil? Donald Trump tweeting about Rosie O'Donnell or this stuff? The answer is incredibly clear to me. I don't know about you guys. That's what I got for you though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. We are still shadow banned on the YouTube algorithm. I gotta get back to work though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
For the next hour. And it's going to be one of those presentations that's always a little on the difficult side, because we're going to talk about things that a lot of this place and a lot of the country doesn't want to hear. But we call it math. And first premise, I need to ask all of us, if I were to walk into a room of Democrats, people on the left or people on the right, and say, what's the biggest threat over the next couple decades that is facing your country? You hear all sorts of things. You know, a couple of years ago with the Democrats, it was Russia. Today it may be this and that. I'm going to argue it's demographics. And you go, huh? We're going to do almost 38 boards here and walking through the national debt, deficit, spending priorities, and the reality on where there's revenues, taxes, what we call receipts. And then you have to ask yourself, does the next generation after that, do they have the right to live in a country where there's some prosperity? Or has Washington, D.C. decided to just destroy those who are heading to elementary school, the future? So let's actually sort of walk through from the realities of the math. Okay, I'm not going to even bother with 1965 and what the mix was. You got to understand, in 2021, 77% of all the spending in this place, 77% of all the spending was what we call mandatory formulas, Social Security, Medicare, formulas. Only 10% was defense, and 13% was everything else in government. So if you like to think that, well, you got lots of pro-defense Democrats and obviously pro-defense Republicans, and that mandatory is a formula that you don't even vote on here. You're electing members of Congress who come and vote on 13% of the spending in this budget cycle. This is how out of whack it is. We're going to walk through how much of this mandatory is demographics. And look, getting older is not Republican or Democrat, but it is math. It is going to happen. So let's actually walk through a couple of the realities here. And I just threw this chart. I know it's impossible to read on a camera and those things, but the point is simple. Today, Social Security is 23% of all the spending. National defense is 15%. Medicare is 14%. In a couple years, all those change. And I'm going to even show you some charts that have interest rates take up even a little bit. That actually starts to fall to 40 very, very soon. And to give you an idea, when you actually get up in front of audiences, and for conservative audiences, the folklore a decade ago was, well, waste and fraud, foreign aid, and then you'd pull up this chart that shows a fraction of a percent. Fine, maybe we should do something different in foreign aid. And yes, the spending from this year has massive fraud in it. But the long-term impacts of those, no. Compared to the fact, we have to be honest and have conversations about how we save or we protect Medicare and Social Security. What's going on around this place? You get politicians after politicians behind these microphones and say, I'm going to protect Medicare, I'm going to protect Social Security, while they're driving it into the ground. So let's actually start to walk through how fast it's eroding. From 2019 to 2031, 2021, functionally 9 budget cycles from now, we will have doubled. We will have doubled the debt. So try to understand how fast this is eroding from it. And in our current numbers, this slide was done about a year or two ago. It's actually much worse with the spending per capita. Let's actually start to also walk. We need to understand Social Security, healthcare entitlements, interest costs drive 90% of the 2008 to 2031 spending. So, let's get that back in perspective. Take a look at Social Security, Medicare, and the interest protection numbers. Remember earlier comment in terms of demographics. This place is unwilling to actually have honest conversations on how we are going to protect access to those earned benefits because the numbers are so big and so scary. What do you have really? You have here even today. Remember running this microphone talking about how we're going to function in way more. But you're under 50. We're about to make your future better. It's already making it big. So let's actually walk through a bit more what the slide look like. Rising Social Security and Medicare shortfalls drive nearly entire 2019 to 2031 non-pandemic. So this is before the pandemic. Start to understand that this is before the pandemic calculation.
Oh, God.
$22 trillion a year in borrowing before the pandemic. That's the baseline number. We actually start to really understand that this is the general revenue system. When you start to add up all the shortfalls, we're heading towards a time where virtually learning your government is not borrowing. So let's actually do a little bit more. You've all seen this slide. Lots of people like to use it. You know, the national debt is set to match or to peak within a decade. Well, guess what? We're pretty much there. We pretty much now hit that what we call the percentage of GDP. Why do we use that? Because there's this theory that says the size of the economy is what allows you to borrow money. And as long as you don't borrow too much money, when you start to, the interest costs start to burden the availability of what they call capital stock for economy to grow, economy to have new investments. And here is, remember, it wasn't that long ago we used to talk about, well, when we hit 100% of GDP, you know, that means the borrowing, the publicly borrowed money will be the size of the economy. Guess what? We've already surpassed it. We've done it. See some boards here that should terrify you.
long-term baseline. And these are all, now, I got to give credit where credit's due. Manhattan Institute, Ryan Riddell, basically what he does is he takes the CBO numbers, and I think some from joint tax, and tries to make them digestible. He also lays out what the short-term, which is 10-year, 20 and 30-year layouts are. And you can go right down to that website and download these same charts for yourself. But the long-term baseline shows absolutely unsustainable debt. And this side has gotten worse since last year when we printed it. Because it actually had in 2050, so functionally less than 30 years, we were approaching up to 195% of debt, borrowed money, the size of the total economy. So functionally twice the size of the economy. That number has actually now gotten much worse.
5. All entrances not operational.
A whole bunch of the other promises that have come in and then the promises that happen. Trying to demonstrate that it is not all revenue. And we have dozens of charts.
Main panel offline. All entrances not operational.
I believe in honesty, especially now, in what will be your final moments in this world. All the rumors, the human sacrifices, the hell portal, the demons. It's all true. My sisters and brothers, be thankful. You will be the first. You will have a seat alongside them, just as I will, in what will become the new world they created for us, starting now.
Part A trust fund of Medicare. Remember, only the hospital portion of Medicare has a trust fund. Everything else comes out of the general fund.
I believe in honesty, especially now, in what will be your final moments in this world. All the rumors, the human sacrifices, the hell, the demons. It's all true. My sisters and brothers, be thankful. You will be the first. You will have a seat alongside them, just as I will, in what will become the new world they created.
healthcare, brothers and sisters in our cities. Our future is young. And gotta understand, there's a fraud around here. You'll get people from the left say, well, what should do Medicare for all? Medicare for all is a financing bill. It does nothing to the cost of healthcare. Obamacare, the ACA, was a financing bill. It was about who got subsidized and who had to pay. The Republican alternative was a financing bill. It was about who got to pay and who got subsidized. None of them are doing things that change the cost of healthcare. I didn't bring this slide here because I did it just 2 weeks ago. That shows 31% of Medicare spending is just diabetes. The single most powerful thing you can do to help the United States end sovereign debt and to end misery in our minority communities and my tribal communities out in Arizona is do an Operation Warp Speed. Go after type 2 diabetes. Is that something Republicans and Democrats could agree upon? And guess what? It has amazing economic impact. We're working on a math problem right now. We actually believe solving diabetes could be one of the single biggest things you can do to end inequality. Because you take a look at some of our urban minority populations that suffer with diabetes in some of my tribal communities out west. And if you normalize saying what would happen, what would this population's income and prosperity look like? Diabetes, that income inequality number shrinks dramatically. It's not a bunch of transfer payment. It's solving people's misery. But it's a little hard to do something that's complicated.
Demonic presence at unsafe levels. Lockdown.
Everything I'm going to show that I actually
Demonic presence eliminated. Lockdown disengaged.
Slow down the economy. There's not a That's a baseline number. You understand how fragile we make this economy because we're unwilling to tell the truth.
Here at the UAC, we take pride in nurturing a growing workforce, and each year we harvest only the best of the best. Are you ready to move on? To take on new challenges? To become more than you ever dreamed you could be? Talk to your supervisor to see if you meet the requirements for this year's soul harvest.
And they're not happy when I show them this, but they understand it's man. And I don't get my head around how this becomes partisan, because you're going to see, if you take a look at the piece of legislation the left drops, they're trying to expand the programs at the same time they're collapsing. I mean, the lunacy. So let's take a look. Let's do the same thing trying to get our heads around. And remember, this slide was done before the pandemic's scale of borrowing. So we're going to be paying interest on that for decades and decades and decades because we never pay it off. Social Security pays.
The UAC. The world is counting on us. How can we review?
32 trillion if you include the trust fund balance. So functionally, just Social Security has a $32 trillion shortfall over the next 29 years. Okay? Oddly enough, we could sit down around the table and that $32 trillion shortfall on Social Security, we can figure that out. Because it's being a defined benefit system as it is. The math, you have about a dozen levers where you can say we can stop subsidizing really
Here at the UAC, we take pride in nurturing a growing workforce, and each year we harvest only the best of the best. Talk to the supervisor to see if you meet the requirements for this year's sole offering. The UAC. The world is counting on us. How committed are you?
Access denied. Yellow security limits required.
Also something
Access denied. Yellow security limits required.
Now, Social Security functions in folks who have made it, including Social Security, a fairly square deal.
Here at the UAC, we take pride in nurturing a growing workforce, and each year we harvest only the best of the best. Are you ready to move on? To take
about $161,000 in a lifetime, and they were taking out receiving benefits of about $500.